most machine learning models, rely heavily on training data. And yet, we're now in a scenario in which the future does not look like the past, or the present does not look like all our historical data. And so pretty quickly, like your training data, if you're trying to make predictions based on what happened in April of 2019, you're going to get it completely wrong for April of 2020. What do you do?
So first, to give you a short answer to your question, we don't know yet. We have not decided here's exactly what we can rely on, what we can't rely on. But to show you how the ML behaved during the COVID spike, we had a train, then we kind of reached steady state. Is this stuff? The model doesn't really reach steady state until the physical warehouse reflects the new model, which means
so this is showing errors over time. What does an error mean? An
error is so the prediction that we're making is pallet of chicken nuggets arrives at warehouse X. We're predicting how long it's going to stay to execute a thesis whereby we put the stuff that we need to access frequently at the front of the warehouse in a convenient location, and we put the stuff that's going to sit there for months or years in the back of the warehouse.
Perfect.
And so we're
sort of
predicting
steady state, 85% accurate.
Right. So
under normal circumstances.
Error here is the absolute value of the actual time spent in the warehouse minus the predicted time spent in the warehouse.
Perfect.
And so you can see here, we were just humming along. Then we decided to close and decontaminate the facility. So you had kind of a pause in everything. And then the supply chain actually doubled down. And this was partly us. We were sending predictable orders down the pipe in order to make sure and anticipate the needs of the retailers. And so the supply chain kind of doubles down. The error actually goes down for a little while. And then around mid-April, something weird starts to happen. And people are going to spend years analyzing all of this. And I don't think anyone has a totally obvious answer to this. But our hypothesis is that kind of you go through COVID for a few weeks, you're sheltered in place, you're ordering either your naive notion of what's going to be what you need to survive, like peanut butter and jelly and pasta, and you're just like going. And then you start to think, okay, this is going to last a while. And so now you start to see emergent cultural phenomena. Like, I want to bake bread at home. Well, that requires a certain bill of materials. That requires yeast. It requires eggs. All of that happened, and suddenly eggs are short, yeast is short, and that's throwing off our expectations.
That was a genuine change in demand. It wasn't just like a time shift, like shifting ahead my purchase of pasta. It was like, I genuinely didn't bake sourdough bread this time last year, but I am this year. And
Exactly. And so that didn't happen until later. Like everything else was just what we call it the bullwhip. It's called in logistics the bullwhip effect, where you just kind of pull stuff and then it pulls back on you. But the new emergent phenomenon are actually like cultural in nature. And so take this. I saw this picture. I saw this in my local grocery store. I live in Oakland. I was at the Safeway in the North Shore of Alameda, and there's whole Thanksgiving turkeys sitting there in the meat section. This was during the time when people were when some of the meat processors were shutting down, and someone at either Safeway or Butterball turned around and said, hey, there's a quasi protein shortage, or there's a fear of a protein shortage, and everyone is stuck at home. Why the hell not? Well, now you have Thanksgiving-like conditions where you need to feed a lot of people. You want protein. And I can tell you this inventory is in existence. The inventory build for turkeys for Thanksgiving 2020 started the day after Thanksgiving 2019.
You heard it here first, folks.
Right. So you're seeing retailers kind of push stuff forward and tell themselves stories and try it. it's not like there's a mechanism for a Safeway consumer to say, I want a turkey. And then it's not like Amazon where it's just like you have the direct connection between the supplier and the retailer. This is some logistics manager deciding, you know what, Thanksgiving turkeys might be something we should try. And then we check in our data, it turns out it's catching on. So,
yes, people bought turkeys. That's awesome.
Right. And so the upshot here, though, on the trading data is that this error, even at its worst at 20 days, is since settled down to about 15, which is not that far off from where it started. But it was actually better than the old human predictions we used to use. They used to be off by months. And so do you throw it out? Even if you assume the bias, even if you do nothing to counteract the bias, you're still largely doing better than you once were. And these cultural phenomenon are relatively recent and new. And so it's an interesting thing to explore. What I see us doing more is kind of selectively trying to curate this of like, okay,
testing,
throw out the shortages, like literally throw out the data when there were certain pork and beef shortages, because that's truly a unique,
not predictive. Yeah.
Right. But do people start cooking Thanksgiving turkeys in April? Well, depends on whether you're at home or not, which is in the current environment is a geographical question. What are the restrictions in each state?
Very cool.